Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon. Well, we who have studied leadership advise leaders, taught about how to lead, have an awful lot of material to draw from, maybe countless documents. But here's a fresh approach undertaken by the Discussion Partner Collaborative led by Tom Casey. He asked them to do their summer reading in the genre of children's books from a selected list representing the mainstream of children's books, the ones that we read to children who are under 10, and ask them to read them with an open mind and think about what lessons of leadership are taught early through these books. And so here's the conversation with Tom to get the first pass on what they learned. It'll be followed by a blog and eventually by other formal documents, perhaps even a book about children's books and leadership. But I was intrigued and I wanted to have this conversation with Tom as soon as they had finished the summer reading, and they have. So here is my friend Tom Casey. Folks, there are some people who I just keep chasing and having another episode with. It sounds like some kind of a medical thing, doesn't it, Tom? But this is a good episode. And this is Tom Casey, who is the managing director of the Discussion Partners and just so active in so many ways, supporting mainly smaller businesses who need a lot of guidance to deal with change and succession and all these crazy things that keep popping up in all of our lives. But when they hit a business, they hit multiple people at the same time. And Tom is the guy to call. So how's that for a build-up, Tom?
That sounds good, David. You know, and when you were saying chasing me down, I was thinking the word stalking, but we haven't quite gone that far.
No,
I do have to share with you that our clients are all over the lunar landscape, from the Fortune 100 to the startups.
Oh.
So I didn't want my partners to go, Tom, you forgot to tell me I was fired if they were working on a large account. But
I get it. I've only known you and you work with the smaller businesses. So I was forgetting that there's a lot more in the picture. But it's a great range.
I can't forget the people who would complain. So,
oh yeah.
But it also does lead me to the topic at hand, which is the research that we did over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As you know, David, the Discussion Partner Collaborative is research oriented. Okay, we do our own research. Oftentimes we do it pro bono, but we also self-select topics that we think our clients would be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Then we publish the research, and then we engage in podcasts, blogs, articles, speeches. This one was unusual, and it actually caused some consternation within the partnership because I had read a BBC article or posting that essentially said that adults should be paying more attention to what is contained in the books that they are reading to their children.
Yeah.
Okay, and it just kind of left it open like that. So I decided that wouldn't it be great if over the summer, my partners, there's 65 of them, the network is over 200, but there's 65 people actually carrying the card.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't we read children's books over the summer and determine, is there anything in those books that if only we had been paying attention would have made us better managers, leaders, and obviously to export that conclusion to our clients if meaningful. That was the charge that we gave to the partnership.
Oh,
Now,
I think that's bold and nicely unusual for serious researcher consultants like you. And I'm delighted to know that you did it.
Oh, it was also makes your popularity rather risky because you're having to deal with. Let me see if I get this. You want me to read kids' books over the summer?
Yeah,
and I'm too old to read kids' books. My grandchildren are in college. There was a lot of pushback on this one, David. It was not a task that was embraced as a brilliant idea initially.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even embraced as an idea worthy of their time initially, but we got into it, and
Good.
we chose a list of books, 50 books that were presented in a by a group called Common Sense Media,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a list of 50 books that they believed that all children should be aware of by the age of 12. And they're looking at the conditioning, adolescent conditioning, and they're looking at, the insights from the books themselves. And they had a list of 50. So we read all 50.
Wow.
Okay. We divided it up, read it. Everybody maybe added a book, given my Peruvian affiliation via my spouse and her family. I did add Paddington Bear. Okay,
oh, yes.
Which was not on the list of 50, which kind of irritated my Peruvian family, but that was added. And other people added The Grinch That Destroyed Christmas. I mean, there were a few that we decided to put in.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is very early on in this exploration, we realized that there were common themes within the books. Okay. And that these themes are important. They were important when the author espoused them. They're important when they were being read to us as children. They were important when we were reading them to our children, and they are important when we're reading them to our grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And the common thematics there, and in terms of their degree of intensity and importance to us, just literally jumped out. Okay. And the common themes, that I'll select a couple that jumped out at us were collaboration, i.e., teamwork, were respect, were kindness, were a lot of things that we really should be practicing, which is the purpose of where yours and Peter's research has gone.
That's right. Put it into action.
What would happen? Yeah, what would happen if we were just practicing these things? Would we have been better leaders? Okay, and frankly, if we had been better leaders and we were taking these things seriously as adults, all right, would not only our enterprises be more effective, but the world around us be more, there'd be more comedy in the world as we know it.
I see it. I see that.
So during the processes that we engaged in really debates about things like expediency, not written up in any of these children's books. The word never appeared. Okay. Not words like selfishness. Unselfish, that was there. Selfish, well, no. Other words that we thought were explosive, which are facts of life right now. Okay, we're coming into the early October, the date. We just barely survived a government shutdown, and we're still not abundantly clear who's the Speaker of the House is going to be by the end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we're seeing the ex-president now having to go to court to defend his business practices, and pretty soon going to court having criminal charges brought against him.
Yeah.
Okay, we're seeing a war in Europe, and we're seeing whether or not we as a society are going to be supporting that war or not. And, God help us, we have to be living, 3 feet under the dirt and not to be assaulted by the news about the upcoming elections in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, as a world, we're surrounded by things that would suggest expediency, would suggest self-absorption, would suggest selfishness, or would suggest unwillingness to confront.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, when we would going through that exercise and circling back to the book and getting off my pedestal here about how to make a better world and narrowing it down to what the books told us about leadership, it was, Jesus, we should have been paying attention, man. You know, and you have to step back and say, I never read books to my children, but I would read them to my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, really wanting to start was the words "in conclusion" because I had other things that I had to accomplish.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So it came across as a task. Okay. For the most part, periodically I'd be relaxed and enjoying the experience of being with them. But, you know, for the most part, I want to be very truthful. Sorry, kids, that, you know, it was, now they're in college, so they'll accept the apology. But now that the thing is that it was something that I look forward to being with them. I didn't necessarily enjoy reading books when they were younger.
Yeah.
Okay, because they would always want you to take your time.
That's
so
right.
all of the things that were contained in these books, if I had been paying attention, and if I had embedded them into the way that I thought about myself as a leader and the supposedly good advice I'm giving to other people about their leadership models
Mm-hmm.
and their development strategies for people, I think I would have been better off.
Intriguing. And I am trying my damnedest to remember the books that I read my kids to see if I could think of at least one leadership modeling done by one of the characters. And maybe that's because a lot of the main characters did leadership modeling to move them through the dilemma, through the thing that held the kids' attention while we're saying what's going to happen next. And I think that there's that sense of, someone better do something. Certainly, as you just enumerated, we say that now about our whole national situation. Someone ought to do something. And in those books, and you did yeoman work to have 50 or
books,
more of them read.
Or 51 if we add in Paddington, yes.
and even in Paddington, I think he turned out to be very resourceful and thrown out into being lost from the family and figuring things out. So there was two levels there. One was self-sufficiency and resourcefulness that was aimed at here's what followers can do, so they don't always have to end up needing a hero to save them. And on the other hand, the characters, as I recall, I would be comfortable with because in a way they were projecting my values on my kids. They'd look at me or my wife's and they'd say, look at that mother or look at that father. And then they look at us, how are we matching up? So those are my first impressions of what this interesting research you guys are doing.
Well, I think that, let's focus on two of them. Okay. That probably resonated with me more. Okay. Well, actually three. One is bias. When children are born, they enter humanity without a bias. Okay? They learn that from us. The good ones, preference, and the bad ones. All right. So maybe we should be more aware that they are paying attention to us and not behave like morons as it relates to tolerance about race and inequalities, tolerance of political discourse if you're in disagreement. Okay, those are things that they observe from us, and then frankly they pattern our behaviors. Okay, because they think we're smarter than they are. I'm not sure I would concur with that, but they pattern that. But
in some things we are, yeah.
Some things I think my IQ is going south on that. The other one would be kindness. Okay, nobody ever died from kindness, but when somebody is being unkind, all right, it is noticeable. And when somebody's being unkind and people are embracing what is obviously inappropriate, that makes it worse to me. Okay, that shows that shape takes the extrapolation from what we were promoting our children to think like, and then how it's manifested. The example that the example, unfortunately, being in early October and living in a blue state here, I was offended when ex-President Trump, who was at California State Republican Convention, and he started being sarcastic about the victimization of Nancy Pelosi's husband, and people laughed. And people laughed.
Yeah,
that just offends me as a human being.
Yeah,
that just forget the fact that I would perceive myself to be a moderate Democrat. As a human being, that's inappropriate.
That's right.
That's the most unkind thing that I could think of anybody could say. And the fact that it's the next president of the United States who wants to be president again, that drives me to distraction.
Yep.
Okay.
Not many villains in any of the children's books quite as nefarious as him.
Or, well, we should probably elevate away from politics, David, or else you won't be stalking me in the future. But let's take the collaboration part.
Yeah.
Okay. Collaboration is good. Okay, but a lot of our meritocracies are, in order for me to win, somebody has to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in order for me to win, I have to beat the other guy's money, all of the standards. But then when you look at push comes to shove, the best example during the summer when we were reading the books was actually the Pennsylvania tragedy where the road fell out.
Yes.
And all of the brilliant advisors are saying, oh my God, it's going to take months to put together. But the governor there, young guy, just elected, I believe.
Yeah, just elected.
Pulled together all of these resources, and they were back up and running within 12 days.
That was amazing.
Okay. Because everybody just decided that, put aside, all of our biases and all of our presuppositions and work the problem.
Work the problem.
And collaborated on it. And these were the things that were jumping out at us from the children's books. I mean, one of my partners is 71, former senior partner from McKinsey, and he basically said about halfway through this exercise, if I only had been paying attention to this stuff, I would have been a much better leader. And we were hearing that, and we've been showcasing some of the early returns from I think the blog will be published this week, actually. But
good,
pre-reading peer review. It's people. It's taking them by surprise how obvious these lessons learned and later ignored, or frankly, probably immediately ignored. Okay, how powerful they are.
See, that's one of the many intriguing things I've heard so far, Tom. What happens to us after we've been influenced by these books being read to us, and we're getting a pretty good sense of how to live in this world, that we forget it particularly when we're moving up into adulthood and acquire power? It seems that that's where the erasing starts to happen. That's all well and good, but we've got to drive through. We've got to, stay out of the holes that are opening up for us. So let's just be ruthless.
Yeah,
for a while.
I think that I don't use the words ruthless or selfish or calculating or behaviors that would suggest, if not criminality, really not very nice behaviors.
Yeah.
What I would suggest that my conclusion, this is my personal conclusion, and it's debatable within the discussion partner community. I take the view that it has devolved into self-absorption. You are only selective in terms of who you embrace beyond that. Hopefully it is your spouse, your family, your friends, etc. But almost you are the center of your own universe as it relates to behaviors.
Yeah.
Okay. and the behaviors that you choose to as a leader, as a parent, as a family member, become very selective. Not only selective in what they are, but who you encompass with the good ones.
Wow, that's a very interesting thesis.
Yeah, it'll probably condemn me to therapy for the next 20 years. But when I think about it, that's my conclusion, because frankly, no other explanation is logical to me.
Self-absorption, so that we're now editing in a way our values. Right. Saying, well, I'm going to be full out wonderful for these folks, but I don't know about those folks. I think
I'll either ignore them, or I won't be necessarily preoccupied by what's in their interests if it's at the expense of mine.
Yeah, that seems to map onto a trend that you and I have talked about in previous episodes, and that is this dissolving, if you will, of the key relationships that form whole companies and teams and everything else, and the fact that we pull apart. We can blame the pandemic, but I think we just also can blame the fact that we don't know how to deal with things that pull us apart, rather than grab on tighter, which I'm sure happened in a lot of those books, and look after each other. We were saying, well, we'll see, we'll let it go for another time, then we'll get serious again. Of course, I'm just yapping here, but I am touched really by the idea that those who wrote those children's books had children in mind when they wrote them. They said, what would I want a child to know about life in the story I'm telling? And there was some love and compassion. I don't think editors would have let the book out, from, their cue, if they thought there was anything mean-spirited or even self-absorbed in there, unless that character was one who was challenged.
I saw a video of that was appalling, and it's been out there for a while, but I don't know why it crossed my screen. But it was a young girls' gymnastics class, and the person who was handing out medals, to all of the gymnasts, young girls, was going on the line, putting medals over these girls. Maybe they were 10 or 11. And came to a black girl, walked right by her, and then put a medal onto the next
one. Oh my God.
And I'm thinking to myself, there's 4 reasons that's appalling. One is she just insulted that girl, her family, if not her race. Second is she sent an extremely ugly message to the other girls there who were her friends.
Exactly.
Third is she reduced this young girl to thinking there's something wrong with me. And fourth is, to the world at large, somehow there's people out there that think that was okay.
Yeah, same ones who probably would giggle at a Trump joke. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess maybe it's my dotage. I see 74, the next birthday candle.
Oh,
And I'm really getting to be very, very impatient with people thinking that ignorance is okay.
Yeah.
And you're hearkening back to the summer exercise we had, how I spent my summer vacation within the discussion partners. And you stop and saying, let's assume for sake of argument, we have lost it as leaders. We have lost the moral compass.
Okay.
And that's got nothing to do with how successful we are or not, truthfully. It's the moral compass that leaders are expected to have.
Yes.
And exhibiting those behaviors, they're expected to manifest. And it's not incongruent, David, with the research that led to our last book that you interviewed me on, where for the first time, when we're looking at development programs, things like transparency and empathy and accountability are emerging as must-to-have versus nice-to-haves.
That's right. The up-and-comers expect that of their senior leaders now.
And, as we're talking about as leaders, and we're talking about success, and we're talking about the next generation, and we're talking about satisfying our shareholders, and over our lattes at Starbucks, we're also talking about being worried about democracies and autocracy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should just reset and start thinking about, okay, let's assume for sake of argument we've maybe underperformed as leaders. So we're still here. Okay, we haven't gone down for the dirt nap yet. So what are we going to do about it? That was the overarching conclusion for my partners. Okay, we just went through this exercise. We're going to write about it. We're going to speak about it. We're going to look like we're smart and all that other good stuff. But maybe we should start thinking about how we move away from the stupidity that clearly we adopted ourselves and change it.
Now there is the rub. And
Right.
I get that. And I think that there's probably no better time than now, given the way that clock is running toward this election coming up in less than a year. And that sense of, well, maybe I should open myself to more risk as a leader, because it is risky, and speak my heart and mind, and move things along much faster in regard to keeping the best and letting go of the not so good in terms of anything we do. That's a feeling that I think I would get after reading 50 books about that we're telling children to trust adults.
I think that
trust us, we can do it.
Yeah. One of the other conclusions that we had is, I'm not sure how trustworthy we would be as leaders, but just by adulthood, based on the circumstances we have created that I just alluded to a couple. But I think for us, as a collective of reasonably intelligent people, that we need to step back and say, all right, it has to be an over the horizon look now at leadership, of what it has to become versus what it is and what it was supposed to have been all along. That's where we ended.
Oh, it's a fresh canvas, and hey, if you guys don't do it, who is? I mean, that's the point.
Sure.
You put yourself through an experience. There was some reluctance at first, and what's Casey's nuts here? He's gonna. We could be reading.
That may have been some of the kinder things. I'll spare your audience the.
Well, this is a family show that I'm running here, Tom. But the thing is that I'm guessing now that among the 60, or almost all 60, they were moved by this experience themselves, personally moved by this experience, to feel, if we're now looking at the qualities of leadership and we don't particularly like what we see, what do we want to see over that horizon?
Yeah. When Moses came down with the 10 Commandments, okay, the word commandment kind of got lost. And then you kind of step back and you ask yourself, yeah, okay, fine. I like 6. I don't like 4.
10 suggestions.
The other 4. Yeah. or 10 things that don't appear on social media. But the reality is, we do understand what are the rules of the game. Okay, if you give us credit for some degree of self-introspection, we need to start living by what we know to be the better rules versus the worse rules. And we should start confronting expediency. We should start confronting bad behaviors when they happen right in front of us, versus ignore them, or God forbid, laugh at them. Okay, think of this issue with former President Trump, and I don't mean to pick on him as the only exhibitor. It's just the most recent one this weekend here. I would have expected that if people listening to somebody say something so dumb about somebody who had been mugged in their own home, I would have expected boos, not laughter.
Yeah.
The next dude that says something like that, I want to hear him booed. Okay, if not, I'm going to send him all 50 of these goddamn books and tell him to read them.
the ilk of American society who is cheering the banning of children's books are the ones who would be clapping and laughing at a bad, horrible joke like that. And that element of nastiness that's around is it has to be confronted, and we got to have the words and the deeds that say every book that goes out could be read by a family member if they choose it, and no society can tell you which ones you can't read. But that trend itself, Tom, like thinking of a children's book, they have aimed it at children's books. They must have known. They must have had a sense that they were in that was where the soft underbelly was, and they went for it.
Well, I think that one of the things that's happening now is the extremism. Okay, is found its way into trying to restrain people from being aware. Okay, when you start banning books, you start limiting things that can be discussed in class, things like that. Why did the people expect that that's going to work?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, one of the things that's really pretty clear as part of the human DNA is curiosity. So
absolutely.
It's like, excuse me, Governor, you're telling me I can't read this? Where can I get a copy?
Well, that's what, of course, I read the left side leaning accounts of things, and I take great joy to hear that the book sales for some of those banned books went sky high, or people were literally giving them away. So yes, there's always a yin and yang, and but I want to move toward this overall sense that you and your partners have, that a new vision of leadership, something about leadership that emerged in your reading these children's books, has to be put in the conversation.
Well, I think if we go back to the scholarship that you're Peter in terms of practice, okay, our research since during the pandemic and then continuing forward has led us to three conclusions. Okay, one is the next generation of leaders is running out of patience with our bad behaviors. Okay, and they have a really attuned sense of what is and isn't hypocrisy, and behaviors such as the empathy, accountability, and transparency now becoming necessary to have is an outcome of that. So that's for the leadership group. For the leaders themselves, all right, the conclusion that we've had based on the research we've done for our books, blogs, and including the summer exercise is that you need to slow it down, think about how you're coming across, and revert right back to the way you think it's supposed to be, and move away from the self-absorption, move away from the expedience, and start focusing on those behaviors, or you'll be called out.
Yeah.
Third is that we need to, as leaders, not only call the question on ourselves if we know we're doing it the wrong way, but call it the question on others in our peer group that we're working with or working for, which is a risk, obviously. Yeah. And saying, "I'm sorry, that's just not acceptable." Yeah. Okay. Oh. So those are the three things that there's research conclusions, David, and then there's bridge over the river Kwai moments where you slap yourself in the head and say, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Yeah. And there was a lot of that within the community this summer. Yeah. Wow. Okay. There was a lot of very first initially skeptical decisions, but then, I'm really blessed to be surrounded by people who think. Yes. And want to talk about what they think. Yes. And want to change if it's not working. Yes. Or at least open to criticism. And I think that pattern of behavior and willingness to confront is something that we just need to be able to do.
I hear a lot of things here, Tom, as I'm looking at our last couple of minutes. But one thing that I think I've heard you say in your last comments is that most of us know full well what it is to be the kind of leader that our society and our children deserve. We know that. And we've, as you said at the beginning, kind of traded some of those well-known senses of what it is to be a leader for expediency, for getting things done no matter what the consequences, those kind of things. I think if I felt that if you opened up a typical leader and there was none of those children values that would develop that they were empty, I would close the curtain and we would find another place to live. Yeah. But I think they're there. I think that those good senses of responsibility for the well-being of others is innate, and it's developed by and large, and it's reflected in what children hear in books. But it's there, and I think that it's going to happen. We're going to have a better world.
We also have role models, Ms. Cheney. Sacrificed her own political career, and being a blue state moderate Democrat, her policy positions are nothing that I embrace. Trust me on this, but I do respect the woman and her commitment to democracy.
Yeah.
Okay. That she must have read Paddington Bear or whatever she read. Okay. And that was her red line. General Milley walking away from something that, as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he should never have been involved with, then apologize.
Yeah.
And his end of watch basically saying to the people that are also in uniform, okay, and haven't been in uniform, saying, remember, the oath is to the Constitution.
Yeah, that was very effective. And meaning he meant it too. You could tell.
And this is somebody who's now under death threats from congressmen from Arizona and the ex-president of the United States.
Yeah.
So people need to come back. Where you're going with this, David, is if you're going to practice what you preach, better wake up and start really practicing it, because people are noticing when you're not.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to cap off. Still another, Tom, when you and I talk, then I have about a week after that, like, oh God, I'm sorting out all my ideas. It's great. It's wonderfully stirring. And I look forward to being able to put this podcast out fairly soon. Maybe I'll put you in a different place in the queue, timed with when your blogs and your books are coming. When is the blog coming out, Tom?
The blog comes out this week, but it'll have a run right up until just before Thanksgiving over the next 6 weeks.
Great. Let's mention, as we're closing, how do people find your blog, Tom? I know you mail them to me, and I love it, but how do they find it?
They find it on our LinkedIn pages. Okay, they find it on our webpage, www.discussionpartners.com.
Okay.
And I don't think you're going to find it in discussion points for President Trump, but I would start out with the webpage. Okay, those blogs get posted right away.
Yeah. Oh, and folks, they're very readable. In maybe 5 minutes of open mind reading, you absorb a lot. And obviously, if you want to know more, you can always reach out to Tom Casey and his wonderful partners, a couple who've been on this podcast before. So, Tom, thank you so much. This was, as I say, now I'm all stirred up.
Yeah, well, I think that bottle of single malt right in front of you, David, says it all.
Take care, Tom.
Take care now.
Thanks for listening to the Practice Podcast, where we discuss practice with a capital P. If you'd like to hear more, listen in on Spotify, Automatic, and Apple Podcasts, or go to inactionresearch.com/podcast-page. And if you'd like to learn more about social inaction and the nature of practice, head over to inactionresearch.com for more information. Thank you for supporting this show. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Oh, and one more thing. How could I forget? The book On Practice as a Way of Being is available now in digital form, something